All right.
Recording in progress.
Well, thank you all for joining me tonight. This Friday, we have the opportunity to learn more about how to create proposals like a pro. How to create proposals like a pro. And so, listen, if you know someone that's not on this call right now, that needs to be on this call right now, I deputize you now to go ahead and send them a text with the link. I empower you now to send them the link and say, Michael's on, you need to be on the call. Period. I don't listen. I know you in there frying chicken right now. I know you in there mopping the floor, whatever you're doing, you got to put it down. Michael's live and you need to be on the call. All right. Listen, everything that I've gone through, everything I'm learned, I'm transferring these skills to you all. Listen, there is a huge gap in the construction market for people that look like you and I. I'm going to say that again. There's a huge gap in the construction market for people that look like you and I. And I want to make sure that we are all doing our part to do something about that, okay? And so I have a lot of information we're going to cover tonight, but I just don't want this to be informational. I want it to be transformational, right? I want it to be information you can actually act on and implement into your business, right? Because what happens is some of us will continue to collect information, but we don't execute. And that's what we can't have. I don't need you just to treat this like another YouTube video that you watch, while you kind of, lollygagging around the house or whatever, while you laying in bed. No, this is strategy. These are things that will help you continue to grow your business and the things that you're doing. And can you all do me a favor? Can you all do me a favor? If so, say yes. Just if so, say yes. I just need some feedback. I am a preacher, so every now and then I need to hear somebody say something. And if an amen come out, I'm all right. I'm feeling real good. All right. So I need you all to do me a favor, like for real, for real. I need you all to let somebody else know about this information. I need you to let somebody, anytime you run into a contractor, somebody else that's out there just doing the thing, right? Whatever they're doing, chasing the bag. It doesn't always have to be a construction company. It could be a service-based business. If you all would, please share this information with them. And I have a lot of free content out here, and I just want people to get it, right? I really want people to learn, people in our community to learn, hey, this is how you do it, this is how you do it the right way. And so I just want to start just with a little intro because everyone will not know who I am when they watch this. I'm going to be doing this tomorrow again as we start our pro course, and I'll talk to you a little bit later about that. But I want you to know that, hey, I graduated from the University of Florida in 1997 from the construction management program. Now, that program is a prestigious program. It has commonly been looked at as one of the premier construction management programs in the Southeast. I won't say the best. I think it's the best, but I won't say the best for the sake of others. But it is very well known in the Southeast for producing great careers in the construction industry. And so I graduated that program in 97. I've been in the industry since. I started off as an estimator. I've estimated projects anywhere from, a few $100s all the way up to several million. I think the largest job I worked on was like a $200-some million job in Reunion that I worked on estimating the entire thing myself. So I have a vast amount of experience. As I continued my career, not only did I estimate, but I actually went from working for a GC to a drywall company. Then I started learning a trade. At that time, I learned how to estimate drywall all the way down to the screws, right? I understand labor and material productions and all these different types of scenarios. And then I had to learn how to manage the jobs that I won. So then I started learning project management. And I said, hey, I don't want to get stuck doing drywall. Then I went back into the general contracting space, and I worked for a company called Hardin Construction that was out of Atlanta. They're now called DPR. And so some people have heard of DPR. I worked there for a few years, and then I went to Skanska. That's the big boy. Most people have heard of Skanska, international firm, billion-dollar company, and I worked for Skanska as well. So before I started HCY, my own business 20 years ago, right? 20 years ago, I worked for all these companies. So that's part of my experience that I like to share with people. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this to know I learned how to do it the big boy way. So I learned how to do it like the big boys do. So I've seen how the big boys do it. To this day, I still partner with Williams Company, which is a construction management firm here in Orlando, and they've been around over 100 years. And so I still partner with them. I've seen everything they've done, especially with schools in K through 12 and even higher education. So listen, I've been exposed to it. I've been around it. I know how it works. And so I want to teach people that look like you and I how to do it the same way. Because if I was to be honest, most of us and most of the people that may even watch this replay, they didn't come up that way. They didn't go to college for a construction management degree. They didn't necessarily matriculate through all of these large construction companies, and they maybe didn't get those experiences that I had, right? And so sometimes we're struggling to figure out how to do it like the big boys, how to do it like the professionals. And I want to just say this, and then we'll get started. You can do it like the big boys without spending big boy money. Ooh, I like that. Somebody ought to get. Yes, sir. You can do it like the big boys without spending big boy money. So what's up, Sensuela? What's going on? All right, so let's talk about how we can do it like the big boys, okay? And so let me just go around real quick. Tonight is focused on creating proposals like a pro, okay? I'm gonna show you a little bit of a few things. So the focus tonight is to show you how to create a general proposal. Then I'm gonna show you how to look at bid tabulations and incorporate that into your procedures. So when you are having to subcontract or get vendor pricing and you receive multiple bids or multiple quotes, how to compare them. Okay, how to compare them. So I'm going to show you what a bid tabulation form is, and then I'm going to show you how to utilize it and how to incorporate it into your business. And then I'm going to just let you peek in on an RFQ, which is a different type of proposal, but I'm going to let you peek in on one that I was on a team with Williams Company for, let you peek in on that so you can see what it looks like and see the level of information documentation. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time unpacking it, but I'm going to just show it to you so you can see, get exposed to it. All right, sounds good? Sounds like a plan? Everybody good with that? All right, so just what is one thing you want to leave here with? And I'll just go around the room. One thing you want to leave here with tonight. Let's start with Pastor Mike.
Just good evening, first of all, gentlemen. Just a better understanding of the process for me, like from start to finish, Mike.
Okay.
As well. Just a better understanding of the process, man.
Okay.
From start to finish.
Okay. So since tonight is specifically with proposals, we're going to start to finish on proposals. Now, because my man Rodney requested this pro course that I'm doing starting tomorrow night, it's all because of him. Y'all say thank you, Rodney, thank you. It's because of him. Yeah, I can't even take credit for it. But we're starting that class, that course. It's a course. It's not just a class. It's a full course, literally going from start to finish with the construction process and what it looks like. Okay. Now I'm talking about everything from the floor to walls to ceiling, everything, A to Z. So 5 days, boom, we're going to knock it out. Something that would take some people years to gather all that information. I'm going to just feed you with a fire hose. So just get ready. I'm feeding you with a fire hose. All right. So I'm going to drop that just on the screen real quick. But that's the course we doing starting tomorrow night, the same time, 6:30 p.m. for the next 5 days. You say, Michael, why you started the course on a Saturday? Because I didn't want this to run into Good Friday. I don't want to teach on Good Friday. So that's why. That's why I said, you know what? The people asked for it. I'm going to give it to them. I should have done this a long time ago. So, Pastor Mike, I'm running this. This is on the construction side. What's up, Owen? We just getting started, my friend. I'm starting this for the construction side, right? But we're going to also work on a pro course for estimating. How many will be interested in that? A pro course for estimating. So what I'll do, I'm going to start, and Pastor Mike, I didn't really want to do it because I really didn't want to teach how to read blueprints. But I said, why not? I said, why not? I didn't want to do it. I didn't, but I'm like, why not? Just go ahead and do it. And if I help one person, praise God. You know what I'm saying? If I help one person, praise God. So I'm gonna go ahead and do it. I just got to get through this, get through Resurrection Sunday, and then our church anniversary is the next Sunday. Get through that, and then I can push out the pro course for estimating. So I'm gonna teach you from chasing down the bids to what to do to look for the jobs. I've done some teaching on that, but drill down. Hey, how to estimate, reading plans, how to put your estimate together. A to Z, how to solicit subs, putting together a bid manual. What that sound good?
Come on now. So let me make sure. Starting tomorrow, you're gonna start at 6:30 for the construction side, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So yeah. So this makes now. If you all get excited, I'll get excited, and once I get excited, it's on. Let's get it. Yeah. Because, I mean, I'll be honest with you. 1% of black-owned contractors are doing over $1 million. 1%. And so, how can we push that number up with everybody I teach? Anybody that comes through me, you got to be over $1 million. Like, that's... So my goal is to get you to 8 figures. If I can get you to 8 figures, I know if you follow what I asked you to follow, because some people hard-headed, y'all. You know, some of y'all hard-headed, but if you do what I tell you, you'll get to 8 figures. Like, for real, I've been there. So if I got there, I know I can get you there, okay? But you just got to listen to me. All right, let's get to work. We're going to make sure that you have all the information necessary for that. So if you have any questions on the pro course and how to get enrolled, we'll drop a link in the chat for that so you can have that information. I also want to make sure that as we prepare for tonight, that you are also aware of the session we did last Friday. So I know a few of you missed last Friday's session. I know like you was on. Maybe 1 or 2 other people was on. We're going to drop the link also for last Friday, because last Friday we talked about how to identify scope gaps. How to identify scope gaps. And so this session tonight is really important because it ties into how we identify scope gaps, specifically when we get to the bid tabulation section, okay? All right? Specifically when we get to the bid tabulation section. All right. So thank you for that, Pastor Mike. I want to ask Rodney. Rodney, give me, what's that one thing you want to learn from this session?
reference to anything specific, whether it has to do with contingencies or anything that's not included in the initial bid, but just to kind of protect yourself when identifying those goals and how to itemize that on your bid.
Okay, so how to maybe itemize contingency items on the proposal? Okay, so let me maybe address that now, and once we get there to example proposals, I'll show you where you can list that. Okay, but let's kind of talk about that real quick. So when you start thinking about contingency, anybody not familiar with it? Since I have so many black screens, I don't know what's happening. Anybody is not familiar with contingency, the term contingency, and don't be afraid. All of us are learning. Okay.
Please, just in case.
Awesome. Thank you, Sensuela. All right. So when it comes to contingencies, it's an allowance or additional dollars that is set aside in case we miss something. Okay? So we may create a contingency. Here's a term, escalation. Escalation. So why would we have an escalation contingency? Can anyone guess? Come on, y'all. Why would we have an escalation contingency? Think about the time we're in right now, where these tariffs are being applied to all of these countries, right? So let's say you submitted your bid and next week the price is doubled, right? Then what? What are you going to do? Come on, let's talk about it. Y'all come off mute. Let's talk about it.
Oh yeah, that's happened quite a few times. Not necessarily in the construction world, but from our residential side, we were like, oh yeah, we bid something, and again, I say bid something, but we didn't truly bid it today. We just was got to figure it out.
Throwing out a number is one thing, and we'll talk about that hopefully today too, because as long as you under my teaching, we don't throw out blind numbers. Everything is an educated guess, right? And we're going to try to document it, right? And create a paper trail, because guess what? One day, as the CEO of your business or as the lead in your business, one day, right, you will have others working for you, and they shouldn't have to try to read in your mind how you got to a number. They should say, okay, I see the documentation clearly. This is how they got to $1 million. This is how they got to $25,550. It should be crystal clear. So we'll talk about that, because anyone that's under my purview, this teaching on the revenue disruptor, $1 million contracts, like, listen, we do not just throw out numbers, because surely that's how your doors are closed, right?
So sorry to cut you off, Pastor Mike. So good question. Escalation contingency plan. For instance, like today, I received a few emails from a few manufacturers that they're already raising their price by 15 to 20%.
Yep, perfect.
I just got that. That just came through today.
Okay.
Now there's a couple of bids I didn't put out already.
Yep.
I didn't have this escalation contingency.
I know
plan.
you didn't. That's why you here.
So this is right. This is good.
Yeah, this is good. So
this is good.
So this is the first thing I would do. I would notify them, and sometimes it depends on the client, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say it's a government agency. Normally they will have their own written procedures on how they handle that. Now, this is one thing. Let me just say this before we go too deep. Even when you submit a proposal, unless there is a bid bond in place, you do not have to accept the contract. Let me say that again. Let me say that again in case somebody missed it, and this could be good for real. if you realize, hey, I had scope gaps I didn't cover. Hey, I had escalation that occurred due to material increases, due to, these tariffs that has caused pricing to increase, sometimes double, right? I didn't include those things. I do not want to eat that money. I do not want to absorb that. I do not want it to erode my profit margins or put me in the hole, put me in the red. So you do not have to accept the contract. Now, are there consequences for that? Absolutely. What's up, Kathy? What's going on? Power up. If you can drop your name in there, that'll be great so I can speak to the name and not the company. But listen, if you receive a potential award, you do not have to accept the contract. Now listen, personally, y'all lean into this. This is a personal development. What's up, Kev? This is a personal development area. What you mean, Mike? Because none of us want to walk away from a contract. Let's be real. We have the potential to do a job. We're like, hey, that's money. But why are we accepting jobs that are already in the hole? Are we that desperate to work that we're already off the bat taking a job that's not making any money, or taking a job that's going to put us out of business? So let me ask you this question. Why do we do that? I mean, just think about it. Why? Because I've done it, but why? That's a deeper question, and it's called personal development. We have to work on ourselves and our mindset to say, why did I do that? Why did I sacrifice the business to take a job where I'm not going to be profitable? Right? So we got to do some homework on ourselves. Some of us may need therapy. Like, for real. Some of us may need therapy. Can I keep it real? Like, because there's a reason why we were jeopardized loss when we already know it's a bad decision. I'm going to just share the last mistake I made with ACY was with this Disney work that I took as I was continuing to build my relationship with Disney, and to this day they would have gave me as much work as I could have performed, but I knew going into it the contract was messed up. But I took it anyway, hoping I never would fall under the specific clause that was in that contract that I knew was bad. And guess what? It happened. It happened. So why do we do it? Because we want it so bad. We think the bad can't happen to us. Right? And for those that are believers on the call, we really get the big head about it. God got me. My God will protect me. Like, yeah, he will, but can he protect you from your own bad decisions? Yeah, sometimes. But sometimes we have to pay the consequences for our own bad decisions. Well, I can't get an amen. I ought to have somebody throwing me an offering right now. Pull out my cash out, baby. Put my cash app on the screen. I'm talking good. Now, I know we didn't come to talk about all of that, but I wanted to share that with you because it's really powerful, because there are some things personally we need to work on that's beyond what I can just teach you through some slides. There's some personal stuff that we need to work on, y'all, and stop accepting bad jobs. Is that good stuff?
Yes, sir.
So everybody ought to drop in the chat, stop accepting bad jobs. Everybody, put it in the chat. Put it in the chat. Like, we are reaffirming our belief in ourselves. Stop accepting bad jobs. Stop accepting bad jobs. Like, just don't do it anymore. And most of us see the writing on the wall before it happens. You know, if it happens after the fact, that's one thing. But when you see going in, oh, this could be bad, most likely it will. So just walk away. We got to empower ourselves to walk away that, yes, something else better will come. Some of us do the same thing in relationships. We walk straight into a relationship. We know we get with a crazy joker. You know they crazy. Hey, but they just so fine. It don't matter. They so fine, and we know they crazy. And then after they take your money, take your heart, take your dreams, you know, whatever. Let me keep going. All right. So contingency. So back to your question, Pastor Mike. Your example. This good stuff. I know some of you all didn't come on here for all of this, but this good stuff. But Pastor Mike, you was asking, hey, we submitted a bid. Suppliers came to me and say, hey, there's going to be some increases coming. It wasn't included in my bid. What do I do? It's a couple things you can do depending on the entity. When there's a bid bond in place, the surety now has to hold that number. So if you break contract or you say, hey, I cannot fulfill this contract, that company will go against the bond that you just placed against that bid. Why? Because they have to make up the difference. So that may kind of be like a bad situation for you and your surety. So that's not something you want to make a habit out of doing, okay? However, it may be worth saving your company if it's a really, really bad bust or really, really bad gap, okay? Now, again, the second thing is you don't have to accept the contract if there's no bid bond in place, okay? The third thing you can do is to follow up with a revised proposal, okay? Follow up with the revised proposal. Hey, I know I sent this proposal in on this date. Here's a revised proposal as we just received increases that's going to go into place before this project start or during the course of this project. Here's our new price. This price is valid until, put the date. So that's one thing when we start showing you examples of proposals. That is one line item that should always be in all of your proposals. How long is that proposal valid for? Is it valid for 10 days, 20 days, 30 days, 60, 90? How long? Now, government contracting, they will stipulate how long that proposal is valid for. They will tell you how long it must be valid for. So it is important for you to confirm with your vendors, hey, I need you to give me a price that's going to be held for the next 90 days. So you need to follow up the suppliers and let them know. Some of them will come back and say, hey, we don't have a crystal ball. There's no way we can do that. So that's where we use what we started off with this conversation, contingency. So you have to figure out what makes sense, 5%, 10%, right? So think about their number. If it's materials and it's $20,000 of materials, you know, let's say it's an increase of 10% per quarter. Well, you can do the math, right? That's easy math you can do and figure what that percentage is for you. Okay, so bump your number up or add that as a contingency line item and separate that.
So, Pastor Mike, so you saying that in the contingency part, the escalation part, the contingency plan for the escalation, are you saying, so basically just add a percentage on top of that? Is what you're saying? Figure out a percentage is what you're saying exactly?
Yeah, a percentage or a dollar amount, whatever. Just say.
Got you.
And,
to
cover that, right? And then
okay.
Put a date associated with that contingency.
Got you.
So we have different types of contingencies. I don't think I'm talking about that on my slides, but we have different types of contingency. Let me see if I'm talking about that. I don't think I am. No. So we have different types of contingencies. We have escalation. Escalation means as pricing increases over time, right? So we have escalation contingencies. We may have what's called a GC or CM contingency. So that could be your own contingency that you carry. And that is normally for anything you think you could have missed. Or it could be for items that were not clarified through RFI process. Say, for an example, You're not sure if there's a certain type of stucco mix that has to be used. So you used and priced a certain type, but you're not really sure. Maybe you never RFI'd it or got the clarification, and you wanted to cover that. So you would maybe have a contingency there. Here's another example. Let's say the architect left out a detail on how to install something or how to connect something, right? And there's no details. So details are missing. So you figure, hey, we would do it like this, but maybe it has to be engineered, right? Let's say you have interior metal stud walls that are 25 foot tall. Well, that has to be engineered, okay? And your drywall guy didn't figure engineering. Most of them won't, unless they're like professionals. Most of them won't. So maybe you had to carry a contingency because you know those are some things you didn't pick up. So for scope gaps, that's from the class last Friday. For scope gaps, you will add a contingency. Now, let's talk about where you put contingency. Where do you put it? Do you put it in your bid or outside of your bid? Let's talk about it. In your bid or outside of your bid? It depends. It depends. If you are a construction manager at risk, and that is the contract that you're being given, you will put it inside your bid and qualify it. Okay? If you are pricing it as a subcontractor, or if it's a hard bid, meaning you're competing against other people, you want to put that contingency outside of your base bid. Why? It's a strategy to be low. Okay, it's a strategy to be low. Why? Because people always look at what your total price is, right? They always going to look at that first. And then in your clarifications, and I'll show you how to do that, you can say, hey, we've added $5,000 contingency and spell it out exactly what you put in that $5,000. Are y'all with me? If you still with me, drop yes in the chat.
So Mike, let me make sure I'm clear because I like this stuff. So you helping me real good, bro.
Yeah.
So subcontracting is best to put outside, obviously, because you're trying to win the bid.
Yes.
But with that said, you wanna make sure you have a subsection that states exactly, hey, listen, here's my contingency amount, and this is exactly what it's for.
Exactly.
Now, with that said, this is my question now. Your bid is 5,000. Your bid is 20,000, right?
Right.
But now you have the contingency of 5,000. Do they go together on paper or with the? Connect that for me. You follow me?
So yeah. So you'll place it on a proposal, and I'll show you when we get to this section.
Okay.
I'm gonna actually show you examples of proposals.
Cool.
And you'll be able to see how we segment that. So it's up to that client to decide whether they should include that extra number. But at least you disclosed it, right? You let them know, hey, this is not part of my base number, but I provided it to you. Now, this is my philosophy, and I want you all to incorporate it into your strategy. You should always be as thorough as possible to provide the best solution for your client. Provide the best solution for your client, because most clients will really not like you when you come at them at after the fact with all this additional pricing. Oh, I didn't have that. I didn't have this. That puts a bad taste in their mouth with working with you, because they already know you're not thorough and possibly you don't know what you're doing. Okay, so when you have that happen too much, right? Automatically they may not want to work with you again. Why? Because they are trusting you to be the professional. They are trusting you to be the expert. Okay, and so that's why it's really, come on baby, that's why it's really important to make sure that you disclose that information. Thank you, sweetie. All right, so I'm gonna show you how we do that. So that's how we handle contingency. Okay, when you have material escalations, you want to disclose that maybe separately as well. Or there are other things that you didn't include. You want to separate those and disclose that. Okay? All right. All right, so let's get to work. Let me go through my slides. Let me go through my slides and make sure I help you with this. So what we're going to talk about tonight, why these proposals matter, some best practices. We're going to talk about looking at subcontractor scopes and bid tabulations, and also, you know, some additional steps on identifying scope gaps. Okay? So why professional proposals matter. I talked about this already. First impression, it equals brand credibility. So if you want to stand up and, hey, they see you like a big boy, even though you small, right? And I must attest, most of my competitors for the past 10 years have been companies at least 10 sizes larger than me. And so people was really dumbfounded. Mike, how are you competing with companies that's been around 30, 40, 50, sometimes 100 years, right? And it's because I was putting out the same quality stuff as they were, okay? And that's because I learned to do it the right way. All right, so first impression is why we do this. It impacts your success in getting the job. It helps clarify expectations, and it protects your company. So that's what's really important. We're going to talk about that in a second. And then also it builds trust, okay? It builds trust. So let's talk about everything that goes into a proposal. So I'm going to show you some examples in a second, but here are the written parts of this. Those that are already members of the mentorship program, this information will also be in the portal, okay? So you don't have to take pictures, but if you're not in the program, you may want to screenshot this or whatever, okay? So key elements, you can do a cover page. You don't really have to do that. I think it's a little extra, but if a company does not know you, you should have some additional information that goes with that bid. I'm going to say that again. If a company does not know you, you should have some additional information that goes with that bid, right? Don't just ever send a blind, what I call a blind bid. They don't know you. People do business with those they what? Yeah, like, know, and trust. So if they don't know you, how they going to trust you? If they don't know you, how they going to like you? Okay? So you always want to do what we call a scope of work overview. What is the scope that you priced? What is the scope that you priced? All right? That's really important. Now, sometimes the executive summary is more so a statement of what you're basing your scope off of. The executive summary is what you're basing your scope off of, i.e., drawings by, I don't know, Shinkle Schultz, construction permit drawings dated October 25th, 2024. That's what you're basing it off of. So that would be your part of your executive summary. But your scope of work is what you priced. So you need to give them a paragraph or give them something on, hey, this is what you're pricing. Okay? Detailed scope of work, we'll talk about that in a second, because sometimes you may have to break it down. And I'm going to show you the right way to break it down, because sometimes you can break it down too far. The schedule, how long is it going to take? Most people do not put their schedule durations on there. This is a mistake. Now, I know sometimes some people say, well, Michael, that can bite you in the butt. Yeah, it can. But guess what? It can also protect you. Why? Because let's say the job takes longer than what the GC said. You can always say, well, I tried to let you know that it was going to take this amount of time. Okay? So at least you have a position to argue. Even if you have to go to mediation, at least you have a position to argue. Yes, I know I signed the contract, right? And you all was trying to force me to your agreements, but all along I was trying to tell you all was going to take longer, right? You have a better position now versus you not saying anything at all. Clarifications and exclusions. So Pastor Mike, this is the heading that we will use on the proposal. Now, there's a difference between a clarification and an exclusion. A clarification is something you're just wanting to make sure is crystal clear. It doesn't mean you didn't price it. You just want to make sure it's clear. So I'll give you an example. An example of this would be you're doing some paint, right? And there's no specification. There's no architect provided specification, and they just say, hey, we want these walls painted. Well, industry standard is a certain millage, in case you didn't know that, but it's a certain millage, normally of some type of primer, and no less than one coat. Okay? Now, most commercial jobs, 2 coats is necessary. Okay? So in my scope or my clarification, let's say on my scope of work, I would say, hey, we painted all the interior walls and ceilings and maybe door frames and metal doors or whatever. So I specify that. But in my clarification, I would say all painting includes primer, 2 coats of paint, watch this, and no more than 2 colors. Especially if the colors are not called out. Why? Every painter know the more colors you get, sometimes the more paint you end up buying. Right? And the more labor, because now you got to wash out more brushes and rollers and all that, and it takes longer to cut in all these colors. Right? So now you clarify that. Make sense? Now, an exclusion is something you did not include in your price. Now, exclusion doesn't mean you don't have to price it, or you're not going to price it, because you can exclude something from your base bid and put in your clarification saying, hey, if you would like to add this to the base bid, add X amount. If you want 5 different colors, add an additional $5,000. Make sense? Y'all still with me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Kev, you good? You still with me?
Yes, sir, I'm still here, brother. I'm working at the same time while paying attention, so please excuse me.
My man.
I'm locking in the contract right now. I'm going back and forth my contractor right now, bro. So I'm with you 100%.
All right,
So
I got
tap
you.
in and out, bro. So please, my bad.
It's all good. Listen, I'm just glad you on here, my brother.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, family.
Because you didn't include it.
Because it's not on the architecturals, or because it's
well, let's maybe back up. If there is
Okay.
something associated with your scope that is clearly identified, you should include it.
right. Okay.
But what I know about most subcontractors, they price what they want. Now, when I teach my pro course for estimating, I'm going to show you how to create a bid manual, which is really for larger jobs and really like jobs that have maybe a duration of greater than 6 months. You would want to do a bid manual, like something really professional, that you send that information out to a subcontractor to price ahead of time, and you tell them what you want them to price, right? So you're kind of giving them upfront information on exactly what you want that may be outside of what the architect provided in the drawings and the specifications. So as a GC, as a contractor, you're now saying, hey, Mr. Site Work Contractor, I know the drawings show all this underground septic system and these aerators and these different scrubbers and all these different things. Now, normally, as a site work contractor, you may not cover that, but my plumber, they're not going to do that work. They decided, hey, we don't want to do any of the underground septic. So now, see, the architect doesn't handle how the GC builds the job. So as a general contractor, I'm going to say, hey, Mr. Site Work Guy, I want you to pick up this scope, and I will put that in my bid manual and make sure they price it that way so they're aware of what I want. But to your point, Pastor Mike, a site work contractor may not see that all the time. That's not something they may always install, because on other jobs, the plumber's going to do it. So they would need to know, hey, let me make sure to exclude this septic work, right? Because I assume the plumber's going to do it. So it's on the drawings, but you're not quoting it.
Got you.
But let me say this. If it is something I can do, then I'm going to say I excluded it, but here's an ad in case you want it.
Got you.
Now, that's being a good vendor. That's being a good vendor. I'm like, oh, yeah, I like you already. Why? Because you're helping me. Okay? So that's a strategy I like to use. All right? Here's something I really want you all to do if you're doing a lot of small projects, and especially if you're doing a lot of private projects. I want you to develop some terms and conditions. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but some terms and conditions, basically, you know, what are your terms for them doing that, you know, doing a job? Most of the times it's going to be for smaller clients that maybe, like Glenn, something like this would be good for you when you're doing work for, you know, smaller, less sophisticated owners. All right. You want to make sure you have your own terms and conditions. It's almost like a mini contract. So when they sign the proposal, they already accept your terms and conditions. Okay, so it's kind of like, hey, you can avoid having to do a long form contract by having terms and conditions. And normally people put this on the back or on the second page, okay, or whatever page it ends up on. But you want to make sure that you have this with your proposal, especially when you're dealing with like private individual clients. Normally when you're working with large corporations, they're going to want a different type of document, but you can start working on adding this to your reservoir of proposal types. And then lastly, signature and acceptance page, you know, how they sign that they agree to the proposal. Okay, any questions on that? Everybody good on that? All right. Jess, you late. All right. Jess, you missing all this good information. All right, let's keep going. So let's talk about best practices for proposals. Always tailor the scope to the actual plans and specs. Really, really important. Keep your formatting clean and professional. If you can use a template, you want to make sure every time you spit out a proposal, it looks the same, right? So it kind of helps you be branded. So in the case like PTI, you all have multiple owners, right? If you all separately work on, you know, different proposals, you know, Nehemiah, you using Arial font, and Rodney, he using, you know, a Myriad font. And like now all of a sudden your branding's off. Like, and then people ask, is this the same company or is it a different one? Why? Because your proposal's not the same. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, anyway, keep going, Mike. Use clear and concise language. I know some of you country like me. and guess what? I write way better than I speak, right? So you're going to hear some slang. I get tongue-tied. I got the juicy mouth and all that. So, but when you see a writing of mine, you was like, oh, that's Mike? Oh, okay, I'm good. All right, I actually did go to college and graduated. Sometimes you may need to include a visual aid or diagram or site plan. Sometimes that's necessary, not all the time. Ensure all documents our PDF and named properly. So this is not like a big deal, but it's a lot easier for people to open files when they're PDFs, especially today. If you send over a Word document or a Google document, everyone doesn't have access to that file format. And so sometimes you'll run into problems when you send over a document in a specific application, but almost everybody has the ability to at least open and review a PDF. They cannot edit it, but they usually can open and review it. So you want to PDF all your proposals regardless of what software you use to create it. All right. Then you want to name it. Some softwares, let's say the software spits out the PDF, right, and it gives it some funky name. No, don't do that. Rename it, you know, and I would just suggest a nomenclature that you can use repetitively. So I would say the project name, then maybe an underscore your company name, right, and then maybe underscore the date, and that would be the file name. The reason why I like to include the date, in case I need to revise my proposal, I can update the date and now I know, hey, this is the latest proposal. Or you can underscore do RV1, RV2 for revision. So that way you know it's a revised quote. But I like to use the date. Either one works. Whatever nomenclature you use, document how you want it to look. So when you start hiring staff, they know exactly what to name the file. So you're using the same nomenclature for all your files that's being saved. All right. Then double check your math and your pricing. It's always good to go back and do this. Okay, double check everything, your math and your pricing. I've heard some horror stories. I've had some jobs where I've missed some big stuff. Thank God either we didn't get it or something happened. But I haven't had like a really huge miss in my career that I actually did the job on. But I've heard horror stories coming up in the industry where, you know, guys were estimating these, you know, these high rises, you know, there's like 30, 40 floors and they missed the whole floor. I was like, how you do that? But it can happen. I can see how it can happen, right? So you always want to go back, double check, especially if you're doing it manually. All right, and for those that are using softwares, you want to sometimes check the system to make sure it's doing it right, right? So sometimes you have to go back in and double check behind software. So always double check. All right, so let's get into some examples. Everybody still good? Y'all still with me?
Yes, sir.
All right, so what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna go through some examples. Okay, we're gonna show you some examples. After the examples, I'm going to show you how to use bid tabulations. Good? Jessica, talk to me. What's going on? All right. She just popped on here and quiet as a mouse. Oh, boy. Let's see.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm sorry for joining late, but I hope this is recorded so I can go back and get all the useful information because I definitely need the help and the info.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. All right. You're here now, so make sure if you ask your questions. Now, this is the thing, and let me get on my horse, as they say. It's so important for you all to be on the lives because you really get more out of it. And then the second thing, hopefully you're paying closer attention. So if you have questions, you are able to ask questions. I know sometimes we rely on these replays and, hey, I can do it at my time and my convenience. I get it. Trust me. If anybody gets it, I get it. However, you can't do that with everything. Sometimes you really got to focus and say, hey, I got to prioritize this so I can implement these strategies so I can get to where I'm going faster. Okay? All right, so let's go to some of these examples. I'm going to pull them up now. Come on, Mike. It's not the example I want. All right. Can you, and I'm going to just do some of these out of order. Now, this was a small job I was doing really for a friend. And it was a single family renovation. So you're gonna notice a couple things. I had to create my own scope to identify, and I'm gonna just kind of show you what I did. All right, so we see all the information is available about the company. They have a way to reach me. Make sure you have a standardized letterhead that you're using. So it should be standardized, the company logo that is used over and over again. Now you're going to see some older ones of ours, and our logo and our branding changed. It evolved. And so you're going to see some different ones, and that's the only reason why, because I just pulled different proposals for this. But make sure all your company contact is available. You'll be surprised how many proposals I get, and I don't know how to reach somebody. Okay? Make sure you date it. Very, very important. Who are you sending it to in detail? Now, the reason why this is important, you want to include their phone number and email. Anybody know why? Why do you want to put their phone number and email on the proposal? Anybody? Take a guess. Take a guess.
In case they go to the wrong place, it get misplaced.
Okay. In case it goes to the wrong place. Anybody else?
Just to make sure that bid's going to the direct person
Okay.
that bid has been supposed to go to.
Okay. Anybody else?
In case it gets sent to a major corporation, it can be directed to that person specifically.
Okay. Anybody else? Sensuela?
No, I do it to make sure that I have the correct information. When I put their name and email address, so once they get it, either or they can correct it to make sure that it's
Okay.
the information.
Okay, so we have 4 answers, and all of those are right answers. Can I add to that? As you grow your team, it won't just be you. As you grow your team, it won't just be you. So if anybody else needs to know who to contact, it's there. Right? So if you just put a name on there, all the email correspondence, all the phone numbers, all this information is probably buried in your email somewhere. Okay? And so when you put their contact information on the proposal, it also helps your team make the right contacts as well. So all those answers were correct. Okay? All right. So as you can see here, ACY is pleased to provide this proposal for the scope of work identified below. Addition of new bedroom, approximately 31 feet by 17 feet, in replacement of the existing covered rear patio. Is there anything unclear about that?
Nope.
Okay, not really.
No.
Now, if I just had that statement without the detail below, I would say, well, what does that include? So honestly, I'm going to be honest with you all. As I look at this, I should have indented these items here. I don't have my markup. Let me see. I don't have my markup. I should have identified these items and indented it so it would have been underneath here. Okay? So it is assumed it's included under that heading. Okay? Instead of looking like, it kind of looks like it could be separate, but it's not. Actually, you know, I think it is. But anyway, so that's how you can be a little bit more clear. Design fees, permitting. Okay, so we had included all that. So you can see all the detail and explaining. Look at this. We're going to replace the driveway concrete, and it should have said and tree, or at tree, that's correct, up to 400 square feet. So that means, hey, I wasn't able to measure it all, but we're going to do up to this amount. So anything beyond that is not included. All right. So new light fixtures up to $30 each. So now qualifying, hey, how much of an allowance I included for your light fixtures?
And if pardon me, if I may say, that's that clarification piece, because then there's no muddy waters or gray area.
Exactly.
They
Exactly.
see exactly what's what. So.
Exactly. Exactly. Right? Okay. So,
Question.
uh-huh.
So I'm sorry, can you scroll up a little bit, please? So with the flooring, you don't put the dimensions there as well? Or
It
like how many toilet sinks? Like you
it
don't
de-
really,
it depends.
okay.
So, I think at this specific time we identified that we were replacing like for like. So I'm saying demo existing. So if it's existing, we already got a count. So this could have said demo and replace existing. That would have been probably a little bit more clear.
Okay, and do you put like for like? Because
You you can you can
the
you
total.
you definitely can say like for like, or you can put an allowance for the price.
Okay, okay,
I think that's good. Y'all are notating some additional things that would have been helpful. No different than these interior pre-hung holocaust doors, right? There's so many different kinds now. It's 2 panel, 6 panel, raised panel. Like, okay, I could have maybe added a little bit more detail there for that, but honestly, I knew they were just trying to get a budget number, so I didn't spend too much time on it. But yes, great call outs, you all. So this thing keeps going on and on. Here are my clarifications. So for those not in the program, you need to be taking a screenshot of this. Those in the mentorship program, I've already uploaded these examples in the portal, okay, under today's date. Now, these should be almost standard clarifications for most jobs, for most, not all, but for most. Temporary power, water, sewer is going to be provided by the owner. Now, some cases, sewer won't be provided. They may pay for the water. If it's a new job where it's new construction, you may have to provide your own temporary power. But if it's in the clarification, you state it. So you and the client can actually have a conversation about it. Here's the next line item is really, really important for you all to include, especially for renovation jobs. Testing, right? Most of you are not including that on a demo job, okay? And that could also run into problems where you're removing products that, especially if it was dated before 1960 or 1970, it could have lead. Matter of fact, there are Florida statutes about removing these things without having it tested is actually illegal. So you don't want to get caught up in exposing your staff, your team, your subs to asbestos, mold, or lead, okay? But you should always exclude that stuff. And then if they need you to price it, you can either give them an ad price, or you can work on it after the fact, okay? But this is some language you should start thinking about including on your proposals, okay? Here's the price, payment terms, and the schedule. So when you're working with a specific private client, you determine the payment term. Now, there may be some negotiation about that, but at least you can stipulate it on your proposal and then have a conversation about it. Okay, but these were the terms that I wanted. Okay, any questions on that example? All right, now I'm going to show you a job where I was the subcontractor. You can see the branding is a little different. We had changed our brand colors. But anyway, for the most part, you're going to see the same kind of general format. This was to Layton Construction, Oviedo Medical Center. It's a job we actually completed. And so here, we are pleased to provide pricing for material and labor for the aforementioned. It's not aforementioned because aforementioned is above. but scope of work as indicated in the construction documents by Gould Turner. So this is normally what we call like the executive summary piece. This area right here is normally the area we're talking about, hey, these are the drawings. We're basing it on this. This is what our quote is based on. That should always be the first statement. We're providing pricing for this job based on these documents. You identify, hey, how does the architect term the document? So on the front of the cover sheet of the drawings, it's going to say construction documents, design development documents, permit set. It's going to tell you what it is. Okay, so you're going to say what it is. So on this set of drawings, it said construction documents. You're going to state who it's by, who drew it. It's always the architect. They're always on the cover sheet. All right, and most importantly, the date. Now, this is not a blueprint reading class, but when it comes to dates, it's always the date, the most current date, because sometimes they can have revisions on drawings, and they're going to cite the revisions on the drawing, so don't mess up the date. Make sure you have the most current date that's on that sheet. And you always go, are y'all listening? Everybody listening? I need y'all to hear this. You always go by what's on the cover sheet. Are y'all still with me? All my ski mask people. Everybody with the ski mask on. I need to, don't rob me. Everybody with a ski mask on. I need to know y'all still with me.
Yes.
All right. So always use what's on the cover sheet. Always use what's on the cover sheet, because sometimes you're running into different dates on different sheets. But the cover sheet supposed to identify the most current set. Okay. Now, in my pre-construction course, I'll show you what we do as a construction manager when we put together what's called a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price. I'm going to show you how to put a complete GMP together. A to Z. Ooh, that boy bad. Babe, I didn't realize how bad I was until now. That boy. Anyway, I'm sorry. Forgive me for gloating, God. Forgive me. Okay, but let me show you all. Nehemiah, they say, long as I give them the glory, huh? Lord, thank you for allowing me to learn all this stuff. Oh, man. All right, let's go back to the proposal. So now you all can see, I give them the scope of what I priced. Now, it doesn't seem like a lot of detail, right? How many of you think this is enough detail? Compared to the last proposal we looked at, what's the difference?
You don't have a lot of specified. You don't call stuff out as you did in the last one.
Okay. Okay.
But
is there?
Do you think
there's a reason why?
Well, yeah, because you're a subcontractor.
Nope.
Okay. I tried.
Yeah, I appreciate the answer. Anybody else want to take a guess? It's all good. I want y'all to talk. Don't feel like it's wrong to have the wrong answer. It's okay. That's why you here. You here to learn. Anybody else? Why didn't I show all that detail that I did in the last proposal?
You're going based off the plan.
Thank you. Who said that?
Number one, Rodney.
Oh, Rodney. All right. Ding, 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 ding. I'm going to get me this little horn on my pad. It's going to do that DJ thing. I'm going to get one of those, but yeah, you got it, bro. Because I'm basing it on the drawings. So whatever the drawings say, that's what I price. Whatever the specs say. And notice this, watch this. I said construction documents. So that includes the specs. That's drawings and specs. So because I base my price on what's in those documents, I didn't need all that detail.
Okay.
Now, if, for an example, there's some things that's like cloudy, or the drawings weren't that good, or maybe, let's say, for instance, on the acoustical ceilings, they didn't specify what type of ceiling tile to put in. Then I would say I figured Armstrong 15/16 inch immediate duty grid and a Armstrong, Saratoga tile 2x2 that's 5/8 thick, right? I would, or I give them a number, Armstrong number 10-2002 or something like that. I would specify then if they didn't provide the information. But if the information is provided, then why am I restating what's already there? Okay? So now I'm giving them a price on exactly what's in the drawings. But I do have some clarifications. But I did put my exclusions in my clarifications, which is okay. Sometimes you can have a separate area for exclusions, or you can just put it all under clarifications. Either way is fine. I think when you have more of this, since I only had 9 items, put it all under clarification. I think when it starts to get lengthy, you may want to separate your exclusions. So I'm clear. Hey, GC, you got to provide the dumpster. You got to provide water, power. Here's a clarification for you, Pastor Mike. Any structural steel supports, if required.
Okay.
There are situations, especially with tall glazing systems. Most of the times it's curtain wall. You may have some small tube steel that's required, right, to attach to. Or maybe there's situations where you need some blocking, right? And you didn't include that. So you should always say, hey, it's excluded. If it's required, it's excluded. Okay? Overtime, right? Some of you all need to go ahead and just add this to your proposals now. And they should be on every one of them. Okay? Overtime. If you didn't factor overtime, you need to make sure you say that. What about parking requirements? If you got to park off-site and your team has to walk to the job, or you have to have busing. What if your team has to be bused to the project? Okay, so I've worked on a lot of jobs like that. Okay, here's another one we talked about earlier. How long is this proposal valid for? This is a staple item. It should always be in your clarifications. And then here's another one. That should say contract. Got misspelled. All contract language to be negotiable. All right.
What you talking about right there now?
All contract language to be negotiable. Basically, when we get the contract, we want to be able to negotiate it. You can't just, we're not just accepting your contract.
Okay.
Now, in situations where they send out a bid manual, most likely they're going to put a sample copy of their contract in their bid manual. Now, if you respond to a formal bid and they provided all that information to you, they will assume you saw it. Most likely they should have a checklist where they ask you that in a post-bid meeting. They should do that. That's like proper procedure to make sure that you actually read it and that you're okay with the contract information and contract language. Otherwise, you're going to run into issues later, and it delays the job. Okay. Here's another one. D'Angela's Diamond. This was another HCA. It's a hospital in Destin, Florida. Their freestanding emergency department. Notice you see the same kind of executive summary, right? But notice the difference. On this one, I provided the detail just like I was just saying in the last. I actually provided the detail why. It probably wasn't clear. Or there was a conflict, okay? My doors and door hardware, I excluded glass. No bituminous coatings. Why? Because sometimes some jobs, they want a bituminous coating on the back of the frames. See, these are industry things. When you start doing these things all the time, you realize, hey, this is not something I want to price. I didn't include operators. So those the big things, the big operators that open those big 4-foot wide doors. Well, they say, well, why you excluded that? Because sometimes you buy it from directly from Stanley. So if you're buying that directly from Stanley, why should I include it? Now, what I could have done, now this is where you're smart and strategic. What I could have done, I could have gave them an ad for it. Kept my base number low and gave them an ad for it. But at the time, I didn't think of that.
Explain that right quick.
Okay, so I'm gonna show you. Let me just kind of show you. So let's say I had this. I hate this keypad. This line item here, aluminum material is excluded, or the auto operators. Why I won't grab it? This line item right here, the auto operators and card readers. Let's say I wanted to give them a price for it. What I could have done is in parentheses here, say if desired, add $50,000.
I got you.
So it's excluded. That 175 here would have had excluded it, but I could have gave them a price and just put it in parentheses and say, hey, if you want this, add $50,000.
Gotcha. So when you go back up to item 2, for instance, right there, Mike, and you saying frames, doors, and door hardware 175, materials and labor included. You're saying okay, for this particular doors and hardware and all that stuff, the 175 for material and the labor. That's what you're saying right there, correct, sir?
Yes. And that's important because sometimes you have to know your client. And sometimes certain GCs, they will purchase the material package for the doors and frames and hardware. So there are companies that just sell those packages, and sometimes they just want an installer. And so for them not to be confused, I let them know, hey, I have the whole package.
Gotcha.
Right? So that's kind of one of those trade things that it's not necessarily discussed. You just kind of have to know the industry and how contractors buy things, right? How they normally procure their trade work. And so I know they sometimes buy the material separately or directly from a supplier to save money in that area, okay? You just have to know that, and you have to know your specific industry. So on the glass side, here's an example, like the glass for what they call it, side lights for a wood door or for a hollow metal door. You would normally price that glass, but somebody else didn't include it because they think the door guy's going to do it. Well, what you could do is say, hey, for all the windows, here's one price, but for the glass inserts for, the side lights, here's another price. And then let's say you got some fire rated glass, right? I will call that out and say, whatever fire rated glass, hey, this price. Because some people don't figure fire rated glass, they'll give them a regular price for a regular, side light, and all of a sudden they got a scope gap. And they didn't realize some of those doors right? 1 hour, 2 hour rated doors, and now all of a sudden you missing the fire glass that you needed. So, but you can call that out, and that kind of helps separate you from your competition. Or another strategy could be if fire rated glasses require, add X, you know. I like this statement. This is another statement if you are ever in this predicament where you provide these breakout numbers. Y'all see I provided these breakout numbers. I should have had a total. That's why I put that here. I should have had a total price. But if you're ever in a situation, I want y'all to screenshot that if you're not in the program. Breakout pricing above is for accounting purposes only. What does that mean? What does that mean?
I'm not sure.
Okay, accounting purposes only. All right. So that means I don't want you to break out these numbers and try to award me only the accessories. Right? Let me put that back up. So my total what I priced was $277. Now I'm giving you this breakout, so maybe you want to do comparison to other bids, right? So I'm doing a service to you. I didn't just say, hey, I included the acoustical ceilings, the doors, and accessories in this $277. Well, that puts a hard job on the estimator or whoever's putting their package together to their client or to whoever the owner is, you know, because the owner wants to make sure they're getting the best deal. Well, now you're making the estimator put in other low numbers to compare to yours to see who's the best total number, you know. So if I take 3 other bids, you know, the lowest guy that gives me acoustical number, the lowest person that gives me a door number, the lowest gal that gives me accessories number, and I add them all up, if it's less than 277, then I say, oh yeah, we'll take them over ACY. But what if my acoustical number was low and my frame number was high? Well, they want to know that. But the problem is I'm saying, hey, even though my acoustical number is low, you can't just award me acoustical ceilings because I may have placed additional general conditions or overhead in my doors and frame because that's the larger number. So sometimes we say, hey, I'm going to give you a breakout, but we're not going to contract on that. Because if we go to contract, maybe this price is $52,000 and not $47,000. So breakout is only for accounting purposes only. Man, this is some good stuff. Lord have mercy. I'm just realizing how good this is. Okay. And then of course
You forgot to say thank you, Lord, for
thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord.
There you go.
Thank you, Lord. All right, clarification. So then you see, you know, with doors and hardware, sometimes there's wiring that, let's say, it's going to release the locks if there's a fire or if there's automation. You know, maybe I don't have the wiring, so I excluded all that. I don't care who else is doing it. It's not me. Right? So I was specific. You can see overtime is excluded, the off-site parking thing. So you see some things. Look at the metal or wood blocking for accessories. Look, only coordination provided. So yeah, we'll show you where it goes, but we're not installing it.
Question: do you put like you only work on the weekdays, or is weekends is automatically on here?
So normally it's a rule of thumb on most jobs. And jobs like this with these types of contractors, they normally had a bid manual, normally, which will state, hey, the work hours, right? Normally they give you those parameters. Anytime those parameters are not called out, you should state, hey, we work from Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, 9 to 5, whatever those hours are. You can state that, and then it becomes something that maybe they want to have a conversation about. Oh, normally our site is only going to be open from 6 to 3. And then now you have something to talk about and try to figure out how to navigate that, as a negotiations tool. But you want to specify that. So that may be something you put on all your proposals, the hours that you prefer your team to work. Good question.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Man, I didn't know it was gonna go this long. All right, let's go into bid tabs. I'll just do a really quick overview, and then if you all have any questions, I'll just kind of just address questions first. Since it's already, I thought we'll be done by now, but I was preaching to y'all earlier, so that probably took that took up all the time. Okay, yeah, I gotta make this screen just a little bit bigger. Where is it? Right there. Okay, so you're going to see what's called a bid tabulation form, and we use this as construction managers to compare pricing. Now, to my clients, you all should love me. Say thank you, Michael. I placed this entire document in the portal. I didn't update it. Don't have your logo on it. You're going to have to do the work. But this document is pretty much a document we use to put a complete GMP together. So the tabs on it, I'm not going to go through that tonight. I'll do that through in my pre-con class, but general requirements, general conditions, it also has, if you want to do a separate tab for value engineering, we do a separate tab for allowances. So we spell all these things out on a separate sheet of paper when we're doing like big jobs. This is usually for big jobs. We had a budget estimate, something we kind of figured internally first, so we had something to compare with. And then we also had the final price that we put together. But when it comes to trades, we had every trade identified on a separate tab. So you can see here, that's final clean, security, site work, demo, so on and so on, masonry, so on and so on. Okay, so this is called a bid tab. So we did this for every trade we wanted to hire. Every trade we wanted to hire. Okay, so let's look at electrical. So these were the contractors that priced it. Here was the scope of work that we wanted to make sure they had. Now, sometimes this could be detailed, sometimes it could be general. It's used to help you identify scope gaps. All right, I'm not talking about scope gaps tonight. Y'all watched what happened last Friday. Felicia dropped that link in the chat. All right, so let's say I get their quote. I always do a post-bid interview. I ask them, did you include all the secondary power feeders? They all included it. So they all say yes, yes, yes. And then this guy, when we say, hey, did you have relocation of the existing scoreboard? Okay, well, oh, that's not required. So I notated that. So that may be something I noticed that, hey, this is not part of the scope. I need to make sure. This meeting is being recorded. I need to make sure that no worries. Hold on. Let me mute him for a second. All right, let me go back to where I was. Here we go. What did I do with my file? I know I misplaced my file. All right, here we go, finally. Okay, so this specific scope, it wasn't required, so I notated that. So what I would do, I would note this on my proposal. So the owner knows, hey, this is not required. So at some point, it probably came out of the scope. Maybe there was an addendum or something that changed this. So most likely that's what happened here. And so I had not required, not required. And then there were some other things. So we got an addendum, multiple crews. So we noticed, hey, we're going to fast pace this. We're going to fast track it. Do you have the ability to bring multiple crews to work overtime or whatever? Some people said yes. This person probably originally said no, and then they gave us an ad. Okay? So every time there was an ad, we showed it separate from their base bid because we like to make those adjustments on a separate line. Okay? So every addendum, people's price changed. And notice the pricing was different depending on who it was. So I'm not sure if you all can. Let me see if I can blow that up. So the pricing was different with every company. Can you all see that? Is that clear? Okay. So, you know, this company ended up withdrawing at the end. Some of this not clear just because it's converted to a Google Doc. But let's go to the site work real quick. And then I'll take any questions. So this is it. So JCB actually ended up not getting this job, but we ended up going with Eden at the time. But we had a price from 4 different contractors. You can see where, you know, during the post-bid process, we identified some things that Mercon didn't include, but they came back and gave us an ad for it because they didn't originally include it. So once we update the bid tab that, hey, yes, they included it, we actually line item and ask for them to say, hey, if you are adding this, give me a separate price for whatever you adding for instead of a total revision. Now, that's really only important if you're doing government contracting, because what happens is with government contracting, government contracts, if you're the GC, they normally will come in on bid date and notate all the bids that you receive. So they're writing down the price. So when a sub changes their price based on whatever, they want to know, well, what happened? That wasn't their price on bid day. So you have to go back into and say, okay, they gave me an ad for this, this, and this. Here's the backup to support it. So now I'm going to resubmit, hey, here's all their changes or all the updated pricing that they sent me since we had our meeting to discuss the scope. Okay, so that's kind of how we do that. So now when I do this with every sub, I'm able to make sure they're apples to apples, because if I didn't do that, it's possible that one sub is low because they didn't include everything I needed them to include. So the last thing I'll say on this is that I like to take detailed estimates in order to pull the scope, because if you don't do that, sometimes you're going to miss something. You didn't look at the drawings, you weren't going through the specifications to make sure that you read it. Sometimes there's things in the spec that pop up, you know, and you want to notate it. Hey, did you review the geotech report? You know, that's not necessarily something that's on the drawing, but it's something I wanted to ask them to confirm. Hey, if you got to do the technique of maybe a certain vibrator or a certain density on the soils, well, that's in the geotech report. It's a separate report. It's not in the construction documents. So I want to make sure you read that geotech and you included it. So you're still going to perform the work inclusive of what's in the geotech. So those are the things you want to consider when looking at this. Got it? Make sense? All right. We done, y'all. I'm going to take any questions. Take any questions. You scratching your head, Pastor Mike. You scratching your head.
You know, when you think, I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and it's just so much that you've been helping me with. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you think you know something,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but this is just a different level of understanding, and this is what I need
Mm-hmm.
at this stage of my life, because I don't have to necessarily start all over
Right.
to get to the top. You see
Right.
what I'm saying?
Right.
So this is some real good stuff. Because like I said, my struggle, as I spoke to you privately, was already in the estimating part. I
Right.
know where to go with the threats and all that. And
Right.
find all this, but putting all that together
Right.
so I can be comfortable with presenting this bid was my I don't call it a weakness. Desire to learn.
Right.
Desire to do better.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I appreciate you being on the call. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My pleasure, man.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Anybody else have any questions?
Got one. How would you estimate a project that you're going in to fix issue from a previous GC, and you really can't calculate like what it's gonna be? Would you do kind of like a T&M with a not to exceed? How do you protect yourself in those situations?
If
you don't want
to. Go ahead. Where you don't want to.
damage your relationship, but you also want to go ahead and just obviously show face and kind of come in to perform and establish that relationship with that client.
Every contractor that I know of that has gone in to come behind another contractor has always done that work on T&M, time and material, with a guaranteed profit margin. So that profit margin you may have to negotiate, because that should also include overhead. So you may need to think about what that is, and if it's a client you want to maybe kind of get in with, and you're doing them a favor, maybe there's some conversation on what that overhead and profit margin looks like, and maybe that's what you lower, but you ensure you cover your costs, right? So that means whatever I pay for, you got to pay me that. So for my team, you're going to pay me my time for my team. I'm not taking a loss, right? And then maybe on the profit and overhead, that's where we kind of work out a deal, where I'm not like, sticking it to you because I'm trying to help you out. But yeah, you got to cover my costs. I will not be at risk for fixing somebody else's issues. I will not be at risk. And matter of fact, in most cases, they are probably going to become litigious and go after the original contractor anyway. Some cases they hadn't paid it, so sometimes there's funding in place. If there's a bond in place, they're definitely going against the bond to collect that money. There are few cases, but it does happen where they're upside down and now they're in trouble. So you need to be very cautious that you're going to be paid. So if it's going to take, months to fix, you need to start thinking about what your payment terms will be in addition to time and material. Why? Because if you're not sure if funding's in place, or they lost already or upside down, they lost too much money, now you getting paid is at risk. And you don't want to do that. So I would have like, hey, if you want me to help you, we'll come in and help you, bail you out of this situation, but we have to do time and material. And maybe, hey, every 2 weeks I need a check. Every week. You can do every week. But I think what's fair is probably every 2 weeks. But I'm not waiting 30 days for a check. Not when I'm helping you fix your problem. I'm helping you, right? So no, you need to pay me. So that's how I would negotiate that, honestly. Did I answer your question?
You did, and then how would you track that at that point? You just go ahead and send them like weekly invoices?
Yeah, so, man, did I? You know what? I'll answer it short here, but since you're going to be in the pro course, I'll make sure we go into detail on that. That'll probably be around day 2 or day 3. So Sunday or Monday night, I'll probably get into that. So I'll make sure let's maybe add something. I didn't even think of that, but let's maybe add some examples of time and material tickets, so you can get your own time and material tickets created. So that means every day your supervisor, whoever's running the job, is having that person on site verify your crew, how many people you had on the job, how many hours they were there. I will also document on either paper or digitally the people that were there. I would have their names. I would have what they did. I would have pictures. Why? Because at the end of the day, if that client, that owner is upside down, they're gonna argue with the time and material. Oh, they weren't here that long. They came here for 2 hours and worked and left. Okay, well, I showed Joe was here from 8 a.m. and he clocked out at 3. And so your documentation of that process on T&M is vital. You cannot be successful without it. So if you're poor on paperwork, you probably don't want to even do the job. But it should be a moneymaker. I've never heard of anyone losing on helping building out a contractor because they always do it on time and material at their rate and get paid as they want. So if you make sure that funding is in place, it's a win-win. But you got to make sure it's funding in place and that you got someone on the job that's heavily administrative that's going to keep up. Hey, make sure your paperwork is straight every day. You doing your daily reports. You making sure you're getting these numbers tracked in. I would even put quantities like, you know, if you're installing a certain amount of drywall, how many sheets did this person put up? How many sheets did this person up? Who did finishing? We did finishing in this area. Like very, very detailed, right? Whatever material purchases, right? You logging that in as it comes in. You can turn those things in maybe every week, like to the client. Just say, hey, before I send you the invoice, I'm just sending you the backup. And then when I send you the invoice, I'm sending the backup again with the invoice.
So how do you make sure someone's funding is in place? You look at bank statements?
It's all kinds of ways to do that. Great question. Great. I like the way you think. Great question. You can ask them to prove it. Before we do this, I need you to prove funding. So it's so many different funding sources. Like some people most are going through banks. Some of them, like government agencies, they may be self-funded and they may provide a letter from their funding source. You know, most banks can actually show, display letters or provide letters for projects that they funded or, you know, things like that. If they're doing cash and it's like out of their bank account, you know, the bank could provide a letter for that. If they're getting grants and things like that, you want to be really careful about those things because sometimes there are certain languages that says, you know, before this money can be released, you got to meet all these requirements. You just don't want that headache. So I would just ask the client, hey, I need you to prove that this money is in place. You know, what's left on the contract? I'll start digging. You know, I'll say, okay, can you send me, before we start, can you send me the original contractor's contract so I can review it? How much of this work is in place? I will go through all of that and see how much is left to perform, and I will compare that to my own takeoff. I'll go out in the field, you know, take measurements, look at everything, see how much I got to pull out, and just take a wild guess first, you know, kind of get close, ballpark, you know, how long I think it's going to take, and then, hey, we're on T&M. At least I know how much I think is out there, and I can verify that number against how much funding is in place. So let's say, for an example, and I'll end this response with this. Let's say, for an example, I visit the job. I realize, hey, it's probably about $100,000 worth of work that's at least that's going to have to be done. But I verified funding. They only have $120,000, right? And so I said, okay, well, it looks like they have enough funding in place. Let's proceed. So we proceed. We get 60% through the job, right? 60%, like in place of doing all the work and all that stuff. Our T&M tickets already add up to the 120. Now what? It adds to the 120. Now what? We still have 40% left to complete. At this point, most likely funding is going to be out. So now I'm having a serious conversation. And guess what? I'm literally stopping work. I'm stopping work. I'm saying, hey, we need to meet. Well, I wouldn't wait to that point. But as I see it getting closer and closer, I say, hey, owner, let's meet. Let's talk about this. You have a problem. This is going to exceed the amount of funding you have left available. Are there any other funding sources? What are we going to do? Because I'm not going to be stuck with this. I'm not going to get to the end and then you're like, Mike, I'll make it up to you on the next one. No, we're not doing that. Okay? That's a red flag when they say, we'll make it up to you on the next one. Red flag. Well, how I know you're going to be here? How I know you're not going to the heavenly gates? How I know that somebody else is not going to hire you? How do I know? How can you promise you're going to make it up to me on the next one? You can't. So never believe that lie. Okay? So we're going to have a conversation. Do you have money? Can you prove you can find additional money? Otherwise, we have to stop. I did as much as we can do. And it's a hard conversation, but I don't think you want to risk losing your own business just for somebody else's problem.
Right. Oh, thank you for that answer. So another question, I don't know if you know, but if let's say they do have the funding in place, right?
Mm-hmm.
You begin work, and then something comes up in whatever situation that they had, and they have to dip into their funding.
Mm-hmm.
But how can you verify that they're not using whatever said funding that you already verified for something else? But how can you verify that? And if they say, well, let's do a promissory note or whatever, will that suffice?
I wouldn't even do that. That never works because you can't collect on it. And then,
right, so,
you can't collect on it. And then if you go to court, how long is you gonna get held up in court? Like, you that's just a bad deal. So at that point, I'm walking away from the deal. Great question though. Like if they start spending money, you're not aware. That does happen. That's why I said your payment terms should probably be 2 weeks and not a month. So if your payment terms are 2 weeks, you have reduced your exposure. So now, maybe you're not as deep in the hole as you could have been. And most likely, you've already made money on the T&M that was guaranteed. You didn't lose money. So most likely, you got at least enough built into it to compensate for, maybe those couple days or a week or whatever you lost. You follow what I'm saying? Like, you shorten that risk. You reduce that risk by making shorter payment durations. So that's really, really important. That's why I said I'm not doing 30 days. No. Absolutely not. Because to your point, that's what happens. And
okay. I'm sorry.
No, I'm done.
Okay. So with time and management, is it okay?
Time and material.
I'm sorry, yeah, time and material.
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay to ask for a down payment, like a certain percentage, and then you could still collect on it just to cover, you know what I'm saying? Like,
that's negotiable. So
okay.
on the commercial side, down payments are always negotiable. It's not industry standard for down payments, but it's always negotiable. On the residential side, down payments are standard. On the commercial side, it's not. So I think it's negotiable. If you're bailing them out, you just have to have a conversation. And when you start thinking about that, does that client really trust you with a down payment? Because most times down payments come down to trust and risk. So a down payment for that client can be risky if you run with it, right? They already in trouble. Now you done ran off with their money. You know what I'm saying? So that's why on the commercial side, most clients, they are risk adverse, so they don't like down payments. So you can try. It's worth a shot. And if that's your terms, that's your terms. Maybe you say, hey, if you're not able to give me some kind of down payment, then I can't help you, But that's for you to determine as the business owner, as the CEO.
Hey, Michael, what kind of stipulations do you add, if you even add it, like on change orders on your proposal, or is that something that like you just don't include on there?
You can. I think you may want to put something like that in maybe some terms and conditions. So where that will be applicable, where let's say you unit pricing for your team. If you needed to add so many hours on T&M for, a drywaller or a carpenter, you already have a rate that you've established that you charge, period, right, for any change order work. So those types of things, that's something you would add into your terms and conditions. Make sense? So I would think anything like that, like if it's not relevant, if it's relevant to kind of like contract stuff, it should go to terms and conditions. If it's specific to scope, it should be more so on the proposal. Does that kind of make sense?
It does. And on the proposal, would you, at that point, like you said, just put, okay, it's going to be a set dollar amount, so like that if they continue with their change orders, they know it's going to end up being more expensive for them?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, but I mean, they, only a sophisticated client would know that. Most clients not gonna understand that. You put in a unit price on that. They're you know, if you're doing T&M and you give them a unit rate up front, and then you say if you're doing T&M, change order rate doesn't matter because you're doing T&M, right? There's not such thing as a change order to T&M work unless the scope is changed, meaning like you went from one building and now you got to go to another building that wasn't a part of the original contract. That's the only way a change order would make sense there. But if you're just adding on additional time per se, because let's say they modify the design in the middle of you fixing something, they just gonna add on the T&M hours. You know what I'm saying? They're not necessarily doing a specific change, most likely. The right way to do it would be to do a change order, but most people are not going to do that. I'm trying to think of anything else. Yeah, but some people will request you to provide your change order, like unit rates. They'll ask you to provide for like your supervision, you know, any of your workers, how much their unit rate would be, which you really need to know. I actually have that in a portal. I taught that, how to put together your unit rate, your labor rates with your burden and all that. But you want to make sure that you show all of that. But normally, that's all you're going to include for like change orders, the pricing. Because normally change orders, you're going to just provide the backup, the support, how you got to the number. So if you got material quotes, you got, you know, your unit rates, and you're going to show the quantities and everything and how you got to that number. You're going to do a change order form to actually document how you got to that price. Did that answer your question, Rodney? I'm not sure that answered your question.
It did, thank you.
Okay. All right, y'all. Well, listen. Again, I think we lost half the class. Everybody like, it's late Friday, man. I'm finna go chill out. But I appreciate you all being on. Tomorrow, listen, we starting our PM, project manager, and site super pro course, and we're literally starting from start to finish, how to set up the job all the way through the process. We'll get into the change order piece and how to set up change orders and everything. Listen, y'all, it's $497. That is the reduced price. And I said, when I started thinking about it, I'm like, I want to do this one time and done, so everybody else got to do this digitally. Okay, they have to just go on and, you know, take the course digitally, and it's going up to $997, and I'm not going to change it after that because it's going to be worth all of that. All right, I already looked in the market, and it's going to be worth all of that. So I want to make sure you all going to see the transformation. Like, I'm giving you everything I got. Like, literally everything I got, you getting. So if I build an 8-figure business off that, you can too. All right, so all you got to do is implement the strategy. So it's a steal for $497. I said, I do this one time. I want to help some people get it recorded, and then it's going to be out there in the clouds for people to take advantage of. So listen, if you all that's going to be with us next 5 days, we'll see you all tomorrow. For everyone else, I wish you Godspeed, and that God continue to bless your business, and that whatever you need, that you realize you cannot build your business bigger than you build yourself. God bless you all. Have a good night.